Hello friends, I want to talk to you today about a problem that is in narcissistic abuse and recovery from narcissistic abuse. And that is that it is very, very, very difficult to treat, and it becomes quite resilient to therapeutic intervention. As I know many of you know, because I read the comments and you're telling me that when you try therapy or you do therapy, it can often end horribly. I'm going to describe the mechanics of why I think this is happening. To be clear, it is not an accusation that you're doing anything wrong or that you're guilty of some crime or that you are in some way broken or anything like that. I've been through this experience. I've made all the mistakes that all of you have made and plenty more, I'm sure. The nature of narcissistic abuse means that you're effectively joining somebody in, they're not joining you, you are joining them in their version of reality. We are baited and coerced into doing this. We effectively, through the bait, whatever the bait was, perfect love, an amazing romantic or sexual relationship, finally winning love from a family member, a father, a mother, or it can be in your career, finally getting the job that you wanted. There must be something that we are moving towards. And on the journey towards us moving towards this thing that we desire, we are encouraged to enter in a sort of live action role play with another human being who is pathological. And as we try to move forward, this trap only works if through your will you move forward into it. And we move forward into the trap because we're trying to get to some utopia, some promised land. Once we're in that scenario, we begin to compromise. We begin to make a series of compromises that we would never normally make. This is distressing to the self. As you are observing yourself, you're thinking, this is not in line with my idealized sense of self. This is not in alignment with my values, with who I think I am as a person. You're forced to engage in what is called ego-dystonic ways, and this creates stress. The stress technically is a kind of cognitive dissonance, but it becomes enormously stressful. The more you move forward, the more compromises you make as you're trying to reach utopia, the more your sense of self breaks down. This scenario between the two of you, where you enter somebody else's reality, the reality that you've entered into is a reality that's spun by someone who's pathological. So the beginning, the middle, and the end of all of this is pathology. They're mentally unwell. And they're demanding, tricking, seducing, coercing, flattering, teasing you into engaging in this fantasy with them. There is a hoped for payoff, a kind of utopian ideal that we keep moving towards, and there are minor payoffs along the way. It's called intermittent reinforcement. Of all the types of reinforcement, this is the one that's known to create the most addictive and neurotic patterns of behavior in the people who are receiving intermittent reinforcement. It effectively hacks the human mind. All of this sounds a bit technical, and you might be wondering, well, I can't quite believe the person in my life that I think has narcissistic personality disorder would be smart enough to do this. It's not that they've planned it out like this. It's not that they've studied the architecture and engineering dynamics of psychoanalytic theory and mapped out what the procedure is going to be. It seems to be the case that they instinctively know. They just instinctively know what to do in order to manipulate you, in order to abuse your love, and in order to emotionally abuse you. And the effects of that are what I'm describing. It's an unfortunate series of events in many ways. There's a lot of factors here that come together that in the end, as far as you're concerned and why you're watching videos like this, it makes it hard for you to recover. It makes it hard for everyone to recover. So I think a nice place to start from is one that has like a sense of humor, a sense of humility and self-forgiveness. I didn't know I was getting into this, but I got into it, and it's a hell of a mess now. As they say in No Country for Old Men, this is a hell of a mess, isn't it? And the sheriff replies, if it's not, it'll do until the mess gets here. Effectively, what you've been seduced into is a sort of a cult, but it's only a cult of one. It's a cult of one person with one leader and one follower. And like all cults, it has a narrative. It has a seductive story. Nobody, you can speak to my friend Mark Vicente about this, nobody joins a cult. Nobody in their right mind goes, well, I'll join a cult today. They join movements that they think are going to have a positive outcome. And they typically do this, not the cult leaders and the cult leadership, the higher ranking cult members, but most cult members do it in good faith, naively, with a desire to do good in the world. It's an abuse of their good intent. It's an abuse of their trust. But it's important to understand that within this narrative, within this false world where we say everybody who joins this cult has been touched by the finger of the great transcendent God who lives in the Pleiades, and everybody outside this cult, I'm just making it up, I don't know, is not fully human. They're half archontic cyborgs, and we need to escape the matrix of this version of reality that's created by a false god. It's like, I'm going into Gnosticism now. Whatever that story is, it's going to be grandiose. It's going to centralize the pathological cult leader as the savior of humanity, the martyr for humanity. Whatever that story is, it's going to be grandiose and fantastical. It's a delusion. And the purpose of the story is not to bring people together and create group cohesion so we can do real good in the world. It is to serve the needs of the cult leader. Do you see the disparity? You are being told one story, but what is really happening is this. There are two things happening here at the same time. You are being told your father loves you, but he is distant, and if you just try harder, eventually you'll break through to him. And the real story is, this not you, it's an example of what could happen. I don't know what your story is. The real thing of what's going on there is it's just not a particularly nice man. Doesn't really care about his children, doesn't really care that you love him and are craving for his approval. He's too far gone into drug addiction, alcoholism, self-worship, fragile narcissism, whatever. The point is the mechanics. I'm making a point so you can see the mechanics. You're told one story, but then you're forced to live in a different one. You're told you will live in a beautiful palace, a Disney style palace, and then you find yourself in a dungeon. And you go, this palace, I don't want to sound ungrateful, this palace, it's got well dungeon vibes in it. And they'll be like, oh, so you're ungrateful. Maybe you're like them, the others, the infidels. Maybe I was wrong to trust you. Maybe you should leave. Maybe, you see. Across time, as you're moving towards your desired Disney palace, your desired utopia that never arrives, your ego boundaries break down because you're effectively humiliating yourself. I've lived this, I've done it. And you get worn out, and then you go into a state of learned helplessness. And then at that point, it's very, very easy for the pathological person who's not powerful. If you take away their capacity to speak and to tell lies, they have zero power. The only power they have is in their treacherous tongues. The only power they have is in the capacity to deceive. So they have the power of a con artist. If the con is very big, then they have big power. If the con is minor, then they have minor power. That's the only thing they have, is the power to deceive. Through time, as your ego boundaries break, you will fuse and merge, because this now is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and slowly they're eroding your sense of self, and all of your feedback loops are being cut off. Family, friends, books, any way that you can make yourself sane again is being derided, is being reframed as a threat, is being reframed as the poison of the outsiders, the poison of the great Satan, the poison of the archons, or whatever the narrative is. The narrative of a cult and the narrative of a narcissistic relationship map. There must be a narrative. What is that narrative called? What are these effects called? So this is clearly a trauma bond, where you've now had your ego boundaries broken down and you're fusing and merging with the pathological person's worldview, because they're your only source of reality. You're looking to them to draw all your sense of meaning and reality in the world. They've hijacked the part of your mind that's responsible for your conscience, your sense of right and wrong. In psychoanalytic terms, it's called a uber ego, but it could be called the inner guide, the conscience. This is good, this is healthy, this is safe, this is bad, this is dangerous, this is not safe, and they switch that around. So instead of moving towards safety and health and thriving and happiness, inside of this narcissistic space, in the fusing and merging with the grandiose delusional fantasies of the pathological person, you now start to adopt their worldview, which is upside down, it's inverted. Once you've lost your sense of right and wrong, you lose the ability to rebuke them. That's religious language. You lose the ability to say, no, you did lie. I know you're lying. This isn't a palace. This is a dungeon. That's why it's dark and wet and I'm chained to the wall and there's rats everywhere. Stop telling me this is a palace. It's not. You're wrong. You lose that ability. And when a human being loses the ability to say no, to use their judgment, to use their reason, to say that is evil, no, that is evil, and I'm not engaging in evil, you're lost. And many of you in your narcissistic abuse recovery journey will probably be feeling lost. And that sense of loss, the loss of self, the loss of time, the loss of our ability to grasp onto reality properly, it generates all kinds of cascading effects off the back of it. But one of the worst things is it creates a sense of despair. I'll never get out of here. We'll come back to the despair and why you needn't despair. Let's put that right there. What is this fusing and merging and trauma bonding and this life called? Technically speaking, if you use psychoanalytic theory, object relations theory, it doesn't matter if you do or you don't. This is good for you to think about it. Just be like Bruce Lee when he created Jeet Kune Do. Take what is useful from whatever system is there, apply it to your life and heal. Your intention should be to heal, not to learn more and more and more about narcissistic abuse. Your intention should be to heal and never open videos about narcissistic abuse again. It should be finished. It should be ended. That's a sign that you've moved on. It's not a subject that interests you anymore. But rumination keeps us here. So even when the relationship ends, we find life still feels real dungeony. It feels super it's got proper dungeon vibes. But I'm free. He's gone. She's gone. He's even dead. She's moved to another country. But I'm still here. And that, of course, generates a huge amount of resentment. There was different people who added to the concept. Melanie Klein added to the concept, Kohut, Frank Yeomans, but usually a chap called F. Sander, writing out at the University of Ghent, is credited with the phrase, the narcissistic shared fantasy space. He originally was talking about shared fantasy spaces within perfectly normal relationships, perfectly healthy relationships. When we're with somebody, we have a shared fantasy. Fantasy in this context is not sexual. Fantasy is not daydreaming. Fantasy in this context, in this area of psychology, is more like a dominant narrative for how we live. What is the story we're living? I don't like Taylor Swift. Sorry, Swifties, but she wrote a song, or someone wrote a song for her called The Story of Us. The Story of Us. We're all living a story of us. And if you read the lyrics, then you don't have to endure the appalling, mediocre music. The lyrics are actually very good, and it describes the stages of romance that doesn't go well. It's the story of us. This story is the shared fantasy. So when you think about the shared fantasy space, or sometimes I'll say the matrix, the simulated reality that the narcissist is creating, and you're like, I can't quite get my hands around that, the way to begin to get some sense of a grip on this thing that's got so much control in your life is to think of it as the story. What was the story of us? And I'll give you a little clue, a little tip here. Ask yourself the question, what story am I living now that continues to operate, that continues to cause me to operate from within the coordinates of the shared fantasy space? A little bit complicated, I know, but a question well worth asking, and one that can lead to liberation. Ladies and gents, I have a new course. It is hopefully the last course I ever make. I don't think I'll need to make another one after this. I've set myself no time limits, no restrictions. I've treated it as though I'm doing face-to-face coaching with you. And so if I need to cover a topic and it needs to be covered thoroughly, I take the time to do it. At the moment, I think the course is around 15 hours long. If I need to make amendments afterwards, I reserve the right to do that. I will continue adding to this course for as long as I feel is necessary until I've gone, okay, that's it. That's me. I've said everything I can say about helping people to recover from narcissistic abuse. The course is a total roadmap, a total narcissistic abuse recovery roadmap from beginning, step by step by step by step by step to the end. The syntax of the course has been set carefully. You're going to ask in the comments, can I do this with my therapist? Can I do this with my counselor? Please do. Please do get the assistance of a qualified mental health practitioner, preferably one who has a very good understanding of narcissistic abuse, and they can go through the course with you and they can adapt bits of the course for you. If you do the course, I can't promise that all the problems will go away in a few months. What I would say is a realistic target is that inside of 2 months of working on the course, you would start to feel 80 to 90% better. That's realistic. And you might go, well, that would mean I only have 10% healing to do. Yes, my friends, but that last 10 might be an ongoing journey for the rest of your life. I want you to set your expectations properly. It's a very good course. I'm very happy with it. It's very thorough. It leaves no stone unturned, but it is a course. It's a course we do online. So there's a limit to how much it can actually do. Therapy is going to help as well. If you do these techniques and your therapist takes the techniques and adapts them for you specifically, it's going to be very, very powerful. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon. Thank you.